Amen. Just want to read the last couple of paragraphs of this document. First selected messages, page 208, paragraph 1. Unless anybody's got any more comments to make on what we studied this morning. Okay, so before we read, Sister Rachel, can you just give us a summary of what conclusions we came to this morning?
I don't remember if we started with this, but in 207, paragraph 3, we were looking at we call it the mystery of iniquity, mixing truth and error, how there was an attack on the foundation, and
It's a little bit louder, not sure if everybody can hear you.
there was an attack on the foundations, and these people wanted to remove some of the pillars of the faith, and we saw that the pillars are what hold up the foundation or the platform that we stand on. I think we went over more, but that's what stood out to me.
Okay. Brother Graham?
To my memory, we spent a fair portion of the class going over the truths that had been given to us by divine revelation and defending why there might be some fine-tuning of the understanding that we have of these prophecies, because we were once given the answer, but we hadn't worked out how we got to the answer. And now we're going back and we're working out how we got to the answer, or how we were given the answer, and what effect that has on our message. Saying that there's no change to the message that's been given. And we started looking at 207.3, looking at the mystery of iniquity. And then Ellen White in this passage starts talking about upon this foundation we have been building, and we brought out that it's establishing truths that had already been understood from the beginning, and using light to further establish all that was already put in place during the foundation.
Brother Graham brought out that before we went to 207.3, we had some discussion about methodology, about refinement, about putting things into place. Do we remember our discussion about the second angel's message? Remember that discussion? Sister Kathy, you remember that discussion? Yeah? Will you lay it out on the board for us, please? Without your notes.
Without my notes.
Take your notes if you need them. But
I'll try not to look at them.
yeah. So lay out the line and just briefly go through the logic of what we said.
Okay. Well, we had Millerite in the 144,000, and we had the second angel here, which is Revelation 14, and a second angel empowered, which is Revelation 18. And we saw that there was,
Sorry, if you really need to raise your voice because the mic won't pick it up because you're not on the mic now, mic.
then we have in this history the 2A here and the 2E. So we would know, because we have the 2 here and 2 there, those are our witnesses, and we would then find the 2A and a 2E here. And we know that this is spring of 1884, and this is fall.
44.
1844. And that these are repeating angels, that this is not a fourth angel, this is just an angel giving more to the first time this angel gives its message that Babylon is to fall, and here Babylon has completely fallen. That's all I remember.
Okay. If you just wait a second, Brother Gregory, what mistakes have you noticed? One mistake. Or is it all good?
The only thing is just connecting the arrival and empowerments, but that's
Okay, all look good.
that's
Sister
the thing
Rachel?
I would do.
I don't know.
All look good? So if you don't notice any mistakes, you just say, looks good.
Yeah.
Yeah? Sister Alyssa?
Spring, summer, not autumn.
Okay, can you put a... Sister Pam,
Yeah.
were you here this morning?
Yeah.
Could you put a tick on the information that Ellen White has given? We'll begin at the top. We've got 6 number 2s there. So in whichever order you want to give, tell us to put a tick on what Spirit of Prophecy has given to us, that we can go to a direct quote. We'll start with that to Revelation 14:2a. Tell us to put a tick or not a tick, if you can find a quote for that. I'm not asking you to look for the quote, but just that there is a quote.
Oh, okay. I think it's the Revelation 14:2a and the Revelation.
A bit louder, sorry.
Revelation 14.
Okay, so Revelation 14 we put a tick.
And Revelation 18.
We put a tick. Now go back to Millerite history.
And the spring. And maybe the summer.
Can't hear you?
Maybe the summer too.
No, you tell me if it is or if it isn't, what your recollection is, or
Well,
what
because
your
I
understanding.
remember her talking about a spring, but I remember a summer. The summer.
Oh, you're ticking the summer, but maybe not the spring?
Yeah, maybe.
Spring.
So you can swap those?
Yeah.
Anything else? We'll go over to our line.
Well, I have church and world.
Just tell me the tick that you can go to an Ellen White
And
quote.
events. Maybe 2E.
2E. Brother Philip? Agree with that? Or do you want to change something?
I'm not sure it's the last 2E.
So you're not sure on the what?
On the small 2E in our line,
So you're not sure about that small 2E?
that small tick. That,
Okay, yeah.
Small.
Is that the only one you're querying?
Let me, I think yes, so Revelation 14 to A, yes. if by the 2E there we mean complete fulfillment.
Oh no, I'm asking, is there a spirit prophecy quote? I'm not asking
Yeah.
what we mean or...
Yeah. If we take that quote to mean 2E, we can say that.
So you're okay with that? So you're saying it's just 3?
Spring, summer.
The 2 at the big scale and the 1 for the Millerite line and no others.
And if there is spring 1844, I would put a tick if you don't put the date, if you don't put April 19th, and you just let spring, I'd put a tick, yeah.
Okay, so you'd put a tick there.
If you let it as just spring.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
Oh, so I said I'm not sure about
Yes.
that.
So I've left it there for a moment, but you're not. You want to take that one out. Anybody else comment? Thank you. So you're happy with the spring of 1844? You got a quote that says spring 1844?
She says that when they were disappointed.
Okay, so you pick up the disappointment.
Yeah, and we know they were disappointed in spring.
Yep.
She doesn't say the angel came in spring,
Yep.
literally.
Brother Jim?
In that, where the 144,000 is there, isn't that in Sunday law history?
So you're saying that that should go there?
Well, I don't know.
Is that what you were just asking?
Yeah, I was just asking because when we were doing this, you had said that was in the Sunday law history, that part. I don't know if that matters.
Okay, so you have a quote for this one, Brother Philip?
Yeah, I said that if by 2E we mean complete fulfillment, yes. She says that the complete fulfillment of the second angel is yet future, and she refers to the Sunday law time period.
Okay, and so what would that be then?
She doesn't talk, that's an application.
Why is that not that?
Even we draw different. If it's not that, why we draw another one?
Right?
Just like a basic logic. Why, if it's the same, why would we draw a different one? It's
Well,
different.
why would you have 2A and 2A? You seem happy with that? Didn't argue that point? Why are you arguing that point?
Yeah, you're right. I should have argued that. I missed that.
You missed that one. So you want to rub one of these out? Let me ask you another question. This 2A, what one is it referring to? This one or this one? It's this one.
You
This
think-
2A is referring to this.
Okay.
Second angel's message was first given in the summer of 1844. This one's kind of a bit obscure after disappointment. But there's a quote for this one, there's a quote for this one,
Yeah.
and there's a quote for this one. But this one is just a generic concept of Millerite history.
What quote do you have for the big today? Is it different from that? For,
Even if it's that one,
and you have the same quote?
yeah, you could use the same quote.
Okay.
So someone said we need to put that line there, and we've got this line here and this one here. So I think you've got quotes for all of these 5. The one that we don't have, which is the one that we think we have in our movement, is this one. And this is? What way mark?
9/11, yeah.
This is 9/11. This one we have to dig out through typology and basically the lines. You have to construct this one. And we spent some time doing that one, discussing that issue. We've already discussed the foundations of the faith are the history from 44 to 50. Now that seems in opposition to what we've taught in the past, that the 1843 chart was the foundations of our faith. So we can argue that the foundation of the faith is 1798 right up to 1850 in 2 phases. We've commented on that. When she talks about the beginning of the work, the beginning of the work is from 44 onwards. We've commented on that. We spoke about the phrase "meet it," and what phrase is that? Where's that come from? We didn't pull out the quote, but the "meet it" quote. What is that?
Ship and the iceberg.
That is the ship and the iceberg. I think we're all familiar enough with that. And then she says this interesting point. Upon this foundation we have been building for the past 50 years. Do you wonder that when I see the beginning of a work that would remove some of the pillars of our faith, I have something to say? So, what would happen if you remove some of these pillars? What would collapse? Okay, so it doesn't mention the platform in this, but we spoke about the platform. I'm just saying the foundation would collapse, because the foundation and the pillars become synonymous terms. In fact, it gets more complex, even though it doesn't mention that here. What are some different symbols that we had on the board here that we're familiar with? We've got pillar. What else? Pegs. Pin. Foundation. And the last one, Sister Tamina? You just told us.
Oh, the platform, sorry.
Platform. So we've got all these different symbols, and essentially at some level they all mean the same thing. They're all really synonymous terms. What is a pin, Brother Gregory?
It helps keep the platform up.
Okay, but in the we said it was something else.
Oh, in application.
Not in application.
Like spiritually, no?
Just in kind of real life. Is the Kathy?
Small pig.
Okay, a pin is a small peg.
Right, okay.
Yeah. And what is a peg and a pin? What are we saying they are? Application now.
Oh, for keeping the foundation up.
But just application. If I said, oh look, there's a peg, what would that peg equal?
Oh, like a nail.
No, I mean an application, a symbolic application. What is? It's a symbol of something.
Oh, right.
You've got something that's big and something that's small, but they're the same thing. What are they a symbol of? Because if you remove one of those things, what's going to happen? The whole thing sort of topples down.
It's on my head.
Sister Suellen?
Well, I'm not sure about it in the application, but it connects things. So I guess it would connect to, things that you're correlating to put on the line.
A little bit louder, I'm sorry. It connects things together.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Brother Daniel?
Information.
Peg and pin.
Maybe about something.
Can't hear you?
What they do, you're asking?
No, what is that?
What is that? Something that you...
Symbol of?
Confirmation.
Sister Tamina?
The William Millard's dreams, the truths.
Can't hear?
William Millard's dream, the truths, small truths.
Why did you say his dream?
His dream,
Yeah,
because
why did you say his dream?
you have the casket and you have different jewels in there and they have different sizes. You have bigger ones and you have small ones like a needle.
Okay,
Size
so
of
I'm
a
just going to say their doctrines or truth. And what is a pillar?
large truth.
A doctrine. Mm-hmm. Or and the foundation is the doctrine. And when you put all of these together, the pillars, the pegs, the pin, the foundation, what do you end up getting?
Doctrine.
A platform.
Oh, platform.
And that platform is a symbol of all these truths all coming together. And if you try and disturb, as she says, some of them, we have to deal with it, we have to meet it. We can't let you get away with just tampering with some of them, even if they're minor ones. And I would contend that a pillar is not a minor one. So when you get all of these things coming together, they all equal essentially a platform. And just the dictionary definition of a platform is what? It's an elevated foundation. We said it was a stage. I was going to say an elevated platform, but that doesn't make any sense. Okay, what's it elevated from?
The ground.
From the world.
From the wicked world below.
From the wicked world below. So we've got the picture of the wicked world below, and it's elevated. We just did a sort of simple picture like that. It's elevated from that. And so you see the imagery of Ellen White's first vision. Sister Bromley.
So you're not putting the platform separately, it's not its own thing, it's just made up of these big and small truths. It's not something specific that sets on top of those big and small truths. Visually.
Visually I'm suggesting that it's not something separate and unique.
Okay.
It's the conglomeration of all of these truths, and once they're all established, now we're going to be standing on this firm platform. And if someone comes off the platform, they're going to go underneath and see, how's this platform held up? And they don't like the way it's held up because they say, we could have done a better job at this foundational work. And they start playing with those things to make it collapse. And they do it in an underhanded way. We read that straight out of this passage. They've got this, the work was underhand and powerful to tear down the foundation of our faith. Now, how can you tear down a foundation if a foundation, because we always think of concrete slabs, you can't tear down something, you have to break it with a hammer. Tearing down a foundation, to me, has got this imagery of something that's raised, just like in the building that we're in now. It's a raised platform that we're on. Some people get off, they're not happy with the way it's constructed. Some of them walk away and leave, and some of them end up coming back on.
Just going to point out that Ellen White uses the same kind of language in her first vision when she says the path is cast up high above the world.
Yes, and that's the imagery that I want us to see. That this platform is like, this room or something. It's not movable, it's just a square, if you like. And what are you doing when you're on there? You're just standing, doing nothing. We call that, if you stand around doing it, we're tarrying. So this is the tarrying that we're doing. But if you go to her first vision, it's a path that's cast up above the world on this elevated platform. And now what are you doing? It's not a platform in its classic sense. Now it's a path. Now you're headed to heaven. So I wanted us to see it in both lights. So we discussed that the pillars and the foundation are synonymous. Kellogg's movement is more dangerous than we'd think because they're only going to pull down some of them. We might say, well, they're only minor things. Let's not worry about them too much. And she says we need to meet them. So we got all of that from this morning. Sister Kathy, is it appropriate to read what you showed me earlier? Mm-hmm. So this is from F.D. Nichols' book, The Midnight Cry.
This is about the disappointment, and this is a footnote. In the days preceding October 22nd, October 22nd, 1844, the leaders in the movement did not present the matter in terms of a sliding scale. They had rightly become sure of the date 457 BC as the time for the beginning of the 70-week and thus of the 2300-day prophecy. But when disappointment came on October 22nd, it never seemed to occur to them to question their interpretation of the meaning of the sanctuary cleansing. They questioned the date instead. They interpreted the phrase in the prophecy, "Then shall the sanctuary be cleansed," as involving the advent of Christ and the purging of the earth by fire. Christ had not come, hence the 2300-day prophecy had not ended. And I shared that with Brother Parminder to connect to when we were talking about no more time, and that when they were time setting, they were moving the prophetic period, and this gave to me a witness.
That was just a second witness of what we said. I don't know if everybody picked what she's read. Can you read from the top, but not everything, where it talks about a sliding scale? Just want to read that. So I want to ask us about that. I want to ask you about that.
In the days preceding October 22nd, 1844, the leaders in the movement did not present the matter in terms of a sliding scale.
Okay, so we'll stop there. Sister Bronwyn, what does that mean to you?
It was black and white.
What was black and white?
The date. They were right.
What's a sliding scale?
You have a few days on this side or a few days on that side.
Everybody read it that way? So Miller's message, when it's at this level, is 1843, Christ is coming. And if this was 1843, if we just did simply April to April, this would be 44, this would be 43. He's going to say Christ can come any time, which is a sliding scale. After April 44, where you've got the disappointment, she says, if you just read that a bit again, the days
Which one?
preceding, I think it says something like that.
In the days preceding October 22nd, 1844.
That will do. So I'm saying the days preceding are what? No, I'm not saying, I'm asking you, what are the days preceding? What's that a reference to? Sister Tamina.
Shortly before October 22nd, 1844.
What are the days that are shortly before October 1844 when you're not going to do any more sliding?
The Midnight Cry message.
Okay, so this is the midnight cry that he's referring to, which is obviously connected to the title of his book. You've got a sliding scale. By the time you get to midnight cry, there's no more sliding. You've got a firm date. So I like that little footnote. And then it confirmed what we've studied, the way we've approached this, that instead of changing the event, they want to keep the event and they want to move the date. And that's what Ellen White is addressing when she says no more time setting. She's saying stop changing the calculation, you need to change the event, like we have done. We being Ellen White and her companion, Brother Theodore. Oh, Sister Tamina, then Brother Theodore.
I was just going to ask what page that was.
So yes, page.
Page 289 at the bottom.
So this is the original pagination, so it should be, that looks like an original pagination book.
What was the book again, sorry?
Midnight Cry by Francis Nichol.
Thank you.
That used to be essential reading. I think it maybe still is a longer trimester in the afternoon, because it's a really good book. Brother Theodore.
For some reason, I've never really thought about this sliding scale idea. But the Millerites were having a lot of the same problems we were having. In a sense, they were trying to sort out their waymarks as they were moving through that history. So, you know, it just never really occurred to me. I never thought of that. But yeah, that sliding scale imagery.
Yeah, it's a
really
nice,
helps.
it's a nice way of explaining it, isn't it?
Yeah, because they were setting different dates through 1843, and looking, was it going to be the spring, was it going to be the fall, and they had a midnight cry, and then they have the true midnight cry afterwards. So when people talk about, well, you didn't have everything all sorted out, so you're wrong. Well, the Millerites didn't have everything all sorted out either.
Mm-hmm. 208 paragraph 1. I must bear the message of warning that God gives me to bear, and then leave with the Lord the results. I must now present the matter in all its bearings, for the people of God must not be despoiled or destroyed. I guess we've all got our own thinking, so I don't know if you're going to think the same way I do. In this paragraph, what word stood out to you? Sorry?
Bearings.
Anyone else?
Must.
Sorry? Must. I like the word bearings. The reason I like the word bearings, Sister Alyssa, why do I like the word bearings?
Because we covered it in an earlier passage, and we were discussing the prophets have had a difficult time understanding the message in its full bearings.
Can everybody hear her? Yep. Okay, so this was GC chapter 19. Great Controversy chapter 19, page 343, paragraph 2. And it's part of the last sentence when she speaks about all of, it's the second paragraph into the chapter, light through darkness. By the way, Sister Rachel, what does light through darkness mean?
That there's darkness all along, but the light pierces through.
Okay, so remember that. There's the reform line is darkness, but now this light is penetrating through. We've done that in our prayer meeting as well. It's just a different way of looking at a reform line, which I think is a good refinement. Last sentence, he says, men do not fully understand what God would accomplish by the work which he gives them to do. They do not comprehend in all its bearings the message which they utter in his name. And what's Ellen White saying?
But she understands it in full bearing.
After 1850, she now understands the message in its complete bearings. And if she does, and what history are we in on the application that I made post 1850? Sorry?
We understand.
What history are we in? What dispensation? Brother Graham? For us, what dispensation are we in after 1850, after the foundations have been laid? Methodology. Like an agricultural cycle. Maybe I don't want to give it to you.
Latter rain.
So this is the latter rain. So in the time period of outpouring of latter rain, what are we going to understand?
Oh, it's there.
The message in all of its bearings. If you think about it, this is the Sunday law history. Here's the latter rain. I mean, what's there not to understand about the message in the time period of the latter rain? In that history, we're required to understand that. Before we read the last paragraph, I want to take us to another Spirit of Prophecy passage, because we're dealing with the foundation, the pillars, etc. So we're going to pick up this term that Sister Tamina gave us, which was platform. So we're going to if we're going to look at the platform. Okay, so I'll stop there, Brother Daniel.
I don't want to move the direction of the class, so if you don't want to answer, just say no.
Okay.
But they changed the 2520. Why didn't you went to meet it?
Okay, so I'm not going to answer that question. I have my own thoughts, but okay. So where we're going to go for a firm platform? This platform. Which book would you go to? Early Writings. Early Writings is your sort of your go-to book, and this comes after the third angel's message. This is the arrival of the third angel's message. Agree with that, Brother Philip? It says the third angel's message. That's the name of the chapter. I'm saying that's the arrival of the third angel. Agree with that?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. So it says the sanctuary, the third angel's message, a firm platform. So these are all short paragraphs. Early Writings is a really good book, especially post-Millerite history. It teaches us a lot. So if you're all there, this is, we're page 258, paragraph 3. 258, paragraph 3. A firm platform. So as I read, think about it in the context of the imagery that we've developed. And then I want to ask a refresher question from this morning. I saw a company who stood well guarded and firm, giving no countenance to those who would unsettle the established faith of the body. What are they doing? These people?
Questioning the foundation.
Which people?
I saw a company. They're tarrying. We can see that. They're not moving, they're tarrying. I saw a company who stood, they're standing firm, they're not moving, giving no countenance to those who had unsettled the established faith of the body. So, if we take this and we apply it to the passage that we're reading, the firm foundation of our faith, what's Kellogg doing?
Trying to unsettle the faith.
He's trying to unsettle. But this firm platform that's being spoken of here, what historical context is this? Is this 50 years later, or is this contextually in the history where this platform has now been established? When are these people unsettling the faith? Is it years afterwards, or is it in the history of the 50s? I want to suggest it's in the history of the 50s. It's when, once the foundations are laid, or this platform, people are going to start shaking it. Obviously it carries on afterwards. If that is correct, and I think that it is, the unsettling that Kellogg's doing is not the first time. So in her history, Kellogg wouldn't be the alpha apostasy. It'd be the omega apostasy, because she's already dealt with, and she says this clearly, she says, I've already dealt with this kind of stuff at the beginning of my labours. Way back in the beginning, she'd already dealt with these pantheistic concepts, although it wasn't called pantheism then. It was called by other terms, like holy flesh. That was one term. So she'd already dealt with these kind of things before, and she saw it straight away. But if we were to read it, you and I, we'd say, well, Kellogg's problems have got nothing to do with these problems that they're having at the beginning. Just in the same way, when Wagner starts preaching Christ our righteousness, Ellen White says, this is familiar territory. I've been preaching this for a long time. And nobody understands that she has been preaching this. They think this is some new fangled truth. People don't seem to be able to connect an alpha and omega. That's what I want us to pick up. That people don't see this clearly. Ellen White zeroes in on it straight away. And I just want to add one point. You'll have heard Elder Jeff say a number of times, even at this trimester, he does it fairly frequently, although judiciously, that what he's heard presented in the classes that he's listened to is what?
To teach in the beginning.
What he used to teach at the beginning. And I'm not saying he was the only person, but most of us, we would have said, oh, that all looks brand new. Wonder where she got that information from. Because most of us are not understanding or seeing things in this concept of alpha and omega, beginning and the end. Just like Ellen White has that ability to discern what's going on and see these issues, in the same way there are people in our movement, the example I'm giving is Elder Jeff, that he's able to see that. And without having that ability, messages lose their forcefulness if we don't see that history is repeating, either negatively, in this context, in the passage we're reading, or positively. So it's really important for us to pay real attention when you hear anything that's given today, and today means post-2014, to see if it is in agreement or in alignment with what has been taught in the past. And without that discernment, you won't have an anchor. And I'm suggesting, we've already read Desire of Ages, chapter 50, I think it's chapter 50, which talks about John chapter 10 essentially. My sheep hear my voice. They can discern who speaks for God and who doesn't speak for God. Now we can do that on a level like an individual who's converted or not. That's the application that Ellen White gives, and that's how I read that. But you need to understand it also, I don't want to say on a moral or prophetic level, but at this corporate level. If you can't listen to a presentation today and know that this is a repeat of either the apostasy that we've had to deal with in the past, or a true message, then you've got no way of assessing what you're listening to. And so you are in severe trouble. Before I mention it in the context of your personal walk with Christ, but I also want to mention this, there are people in our movement. I'll give an example, I don't want to mention names, but there was a sister, she got, if you can say it this way, she got posted to another country to go to a camp meeting, and she's listening to presentations, and she's saying, this is not right. Whatever's being presented is funny, and she's talking to a brother next to her, and he's saying, does it look right to you? And he's saying, I don't know, looks okay to me. She says, no, this is not right. Lo and behold, with that discernment, because she is experienced in this thing, so it gives you an indication that she's paying attention not only what's happened now, but she's paying attention to what happened before. And it doesn't have the ring of truth to it. The person she's sitting next to, the brother, he is oblivious to what's going on. He can't discern between what's right and what's wrong. And as time develops, her discernment has been proven to be true. So even though I mentioned Elder Jeff, it's not the only time this happened, it does happen. And so when I say each of us is required to have that ability to know who speaks of God and who doesn't, it was based upon that Desire of Ages passage, which is dealing with your own personal walk with God, but it's also about how much attention you've been paying over the years, whether or not you've been listening. Now, you might not be able to teach, you might not be able to get up for whatever reason, but if you can discern where, if this thing is true or this thing is error, you're experiencing chapter 50. It's a sign that you and Christ are walking together and you're his servant. So I want us to think about that, because we don't measure ourselves about our ability to teach or how much information we can remember or the dates or anything. It's the ability to be able to discern, and that discernment is not in some vacuum. Everything that we're teaching now is nothing new. Even the controversies are not new. They're all things that we should be able to deal with now. So if you see truth, you just need to make sure whether it's what we taught in the past, and you can do that.
I guess that's the experience the plant has under the latter rain, because it comes to full maturity. And if we want to come to full maturity, we have to eat the meat, and the eating of the meat is the being able to discern between good and evil.
Yes. And it's not just based upon you're a nice person and you and Christ are one. It's also based on your ability to actually understand what the foundations of our faith were. If you have accepted those, you'll know who speaks for God and who doesn't. So I wanted to add that point in because people are concerned that maybe their walk with God is not good, they've got some problems, whatever they may or may not be, and therefore how are they ever going to be part of the 144,000? And I just want to show there's this completely different, I don't want to say completely different way, but there's another way to approach that, equally as valid. I'm not trying to undo one or the other, but both have to come together, an intellectual and a spiritual experience. Okay, so we've got this platform. God looked upon them with approbation. Brother Philip, what's approbation?
To give like a synonym or to explain.
Because not everybody knows what approbation means.
He was content. He was happy with what he was saying.
Content, happy. Everybody okay with content, happy? Someone want to?
Approval?
Sorry,
Oh, yeah.
approval.
Yeah.
Approval is really it's not. You can get happiness out of that, but it's really about approval. He approves of them. God looked upon them with approbation. I was shown 3 steps: the first, second, and third angel's messages. Said my accompanying angel, woe to him who shall move a block or stir a pin of these messages. So here she's going to use this word block, which is not on our board. The true understanding of these messages is of vital importance. The destiny of souls hangs upon the manner in which they are received. I was again brought down through these messages and saw how dearly the people of God had purchased their experience. It had been obtained through much suffering and with severe conflict. God had shown that God had led them step by step until He had placed them upon a solid, immovable platform. Sister Tamina, just run us through that imagery from third sentence. I was shown.
So what do you want me to do?
Just run us through what you're seeing here. Shows if you were to do a graphic on this, what does this look like?
Okay, she's shown 3 steps, which are the first, the second, and the third angel's message. And then the angel tells us when a person, no person is to remove any little bit of these messages. So I guess the 3 angels' messages are located. They are put in place and nobody's to remove them.
So we've got these 3 angels' messages and they're being put in their place and we shouldn't move them.
Yes. And this understanding is of vital importance, so it's salvational. So when do you want me to go?
To immovable platform.
Okay, so it's a vital importance, it's salvational. And then she is shown how clearly this experience, or how dearly this experience was for God's people to obtain the knowledge about these messages. The 3 steps, I would suggest. And this experience the experience included much suffering and severe conflict. And God was leading them, and I guess He was leading them through those 3 steps, the 3 angels' messages, and then they're on a platform.
How did you get onto the platform, Sister Sue Ellen? Are you on the same? You're on the same page as us?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. How did you get onto that platform?
Well, you step up on it.
Sorry.
I thought you stepped up on it.
And how do you reach it? Because it's cast high above the earth. In your human strength, can you sort of get your leg up onto that platform? How do you get onto that platform?
Well, I know that they were rejoicing.
They were rejoicing?
I was reading this. So they approached the platform and examined.
That's fine. I just want to know how you get onto the platform. It's just that one question.
I guess you must be lifted up.
We lifted up. Sister Pam, how did you get onto the platform?
There's suffering and severe conflict. That's what I see.
Suffering and severe conflict is going to get you onto the platform. Sister Bronwyn, how did you get onto the platform?
God places you there.
God places you there. So like lifts you up and plonks you there?
You start moving along and He puts you there. That's what the verse is.
Sister Rachel, how did you get onto the platform?
You climb up through the 3 steps of the during those messages.
Okay.
So there's a ladder that's got 3 steps.
Isn't the 3 steps the platform?
The way.
Isn't the 3 steps the platform?
Is the 3 steps the platform, Sister Rachel?
No.
I don't think so.
She says no.
But it's saying here, woe to him who shall move a block or steal a pin of these messages. It's the same thing she was talking about, the pillars, the peg, the pin, foundation, platform.
I don't know why it's in a difficult position. She's got this parable to deal with, and everything's just the whole foundation. Sister Bronwyn, what do you say?
It sounds like they're moving along to the platform and how this is described.
And when you move along,
It's on steps. That's what it sounds like. But then at the end, it's like almost that last step is too high for you, and God places you at it.
so you can see more clearly.
So, the true understanding of these messages is of vital importance. The destiny of souls hangs upon the manner which they receive. That's an angel speaking to her, if you're okay with that. Then it says, I was again brought down through these messages. What does that mean? I was brought down through the messages. Sister Alyssa, what does it mean, down through the messages?
I think it's meaning just shown the way, I guess how I'm seeing it is like she's walking and going through these stages, the three angels' messages.
So, I was again brought down through these messages. She just was walked through the history. The angel walked her through that history and saw how dearly the people of God had purchased their experience. When did they purchase their experience, Sister Kathy?
When the foundations will be laid.
Which history?
1840 to 44.
Okay, so maybe we'd go, because it's the first and second, maybe we'd go from 1798 if we're going to complete the refine. So this purchasing of their experience is Millerite history, so you get to October. It had been obtained through much suffering and severe conflict. God had led them along step by step, so they're walking step by step. Brother Daniel, what steps are they walking along? Three angels' messages. I was brought again down through these messages. God led them step by step. I was shown 3 steps until he had placed them upon a solid, immovable platform. So this is where people were saying that God has placed you there. That's what they were picking up, until he had placed them upon a solid, immovable platform. So I'm saying God placed you here, the first, God placed you on the second, placed you on the third, and then he places you on this immovable platform. Whether or not the third is below the platform, I'm not arguing, but the platform is the culmination of all 3 messages. So the first, second, third angels' messages, which is Millerite history, are what? They're the foundations upon which this platform sits. But they're also the steps to get onto the platform. So I like that.
Do they equal the platform?
At one level, once you're standing upon all these messages, you're standing on the first, second, third angels' messages. That's the immovable platform. You can't move those platforms. And someone said, I can't remember who said it, they've been placed. Someone said that they've been placed, so the historical placement mustn't be moved. If you move the historical placement, the platform begins to wobble and collapse. So yes, the first, second, third angels' messages are the foundation, and once you've gone through all of those, you're now standing on this platform. So the platform sits above them, but you have this different imagery. So this one, the way she's doing it, it seems to me that they're like a step ladder to get onto this platform. There's no way of getting there any other way. God has to lead you step by step. But once you're on that platform is a culmination of all of that history which was dearly purchased, which has to have been Millerite history, first, second, and third angels' messages. Does that answer? You okay with that? Yeah. Sister Tamina, Brother Daniel.
2 things shortly. The third we see also leading up to the platform, because I suggest the platform is 1850 with the table. That's not when they're on this firm platform, and you're already in the third angel. And another thing is we use the quote where it says you can't have a third without the second and the first. So you can't come up on this platform not having the first and the second step, because you can't jump up it. You got to do all the steps.
Brother Dan?
I don't know if you can still at this, but if you say the foundations are separated prophecies or separated truths that you have, and the whole body of truths is the platform. Like the chart is the platform, but each one of them is a foundational principle.
That's how I understand it. This platform of truth is the body of truth. let me not take the platform.
Casket. The casket of Miller.
Sorry?
The box of Miller, casket.
Yes.
The dreams box and all that.
So I'm saying that the platform is all of these truths gathered together. All those truths gathered together are pictured as the steps. They're pictured as the pillars, the pegs, the pins. It's everything that holds this platform in place.
I like that she connects experience with messages, and that it's not just a intellectual, but these you actually have an experience that leads you, and it's actually you are being led by the Lord in those experiences, and it will bring you to this platform of truths.
At a price.
At a price.
I saw how dearly they had to pay
Much
to
suffering.
purchase their experience. I like that. Brother Philip, next sentence. I saw individuals approach the platform and examine the foundation. What history are we in?
The previous sentence said God led them along step by step, so they just finished the platform. We can mark that 1850, I think. And then after that, I suppose, because the foundation must have been finished before they start examining it, I saw individuals approach the platform and examine. The church goes into Laodicean condition, and the leaders, James White, others, I don't know, you asked me.
So these individuals is James White, as one example.
Could be, because it says some got back, some,
Okay. Mr. Bronwyn?
yeah.
Yeah, that could be James White.
54.
50-54. And this could be James White.
I'm not gonna say it could be James White.
Yeah, probably because he didn't.
Okay, so who could it be then?
Bad guys.
Bad guys.
There's
Bad guys.
Okay, he's not a bad guy.
No.
Okay. Sister Tamina?
Well, it says here I saw individuals approach the platform, examine the foundation, meaning they're not on the platform,
Yeah.
right?
Amen. And new people coming in, public evangelism. Yeah.
yeah.
So you've got these individuals, they're approaching the platform. They were never on the platform.
Yes.
Can we see that?
Yeah.
So even though I didn't want to elicit that James White was good or bad, but I'm saying it couldn't have been James White, because James White was on the platform. So this group of people are new people. They never went through Millerite history.
So is it somebody like Uriah Smith?
I don't know who it was. I'm not trying to even put a name. All I wanted us to see is that whoever these are, they're brand new people. They're not people who had gone through the Millerite history. They're not true pioneers, if we can use that. Then it says, some with rejoicing immediately stepped upon it. Others commenced to find fault with the foundation. So all these people, they've not even been on the foundation. They wished improvements made, and then the platform would be more perfect and the people much happier. So all of that are people that have never even been on the foundation. Then it says some stepped off the platform to examine it and declared it to be laid wrong. But I saw that nearly all stood firm upon the platform and exhorted those who had stepped off to cease their complaints. The one the phrase that I like out of this last sentence where it says, but I saw, it says nearly all. And you know, people are going to teach you who have left the movement say the majority is always wrong. And here it says the majority is right. They stay on the platform. I just think that's interesting. God was the builder and they were fighting against him. They recounted the wonderful work of God which had led them to the firm platform, and in union raised their eyes to heaven with a loud voice, glorified God. This affected some of those who had complained and had left, I put the word had, and had left the platform, and they with humble look again stepped upon it. Brother Daniel, what's going on here? What history are we in? If we make application,
Make an application.
what history are we in?
Loud cry.
We're in the loud cry history. This is the latter rain Sunday law history. There's a loud cry. And in that loud cry, the people who stay on the platform, they're going to tell those who had come off to get back on the platform, and some of them do. All I want to add, because we like looking at fractals and then going back instead of doing it the other way round, what's that teaching you if that's true about the Sunday law history? If our application is correct, it's saying there are people who are left the movement or something who are going to get back on post Sunday law. If that application is correct, if we can go up and down fractals.
Means that the Sunday law is not the close of probation.
Yeah, I think there's still lots for us to learn about what close of probation actually means, what it looks like, who's the target audience for a close of probation. I don't think those things, to me, they're not as cut and dry as we think. And oh yes, there's one more point I wanted to bring up. We brought this up this morning. So once the foundations have been laid, it's this body of truth. What more information is there? I'm arguing there isn't any more information. Once the platform is laid, what happens? You just get more and more people coming on the platform. So you get increasing numbers of people, but the platform has already been laid and set. It doesn't grow. There's no construction work gone on after the platform's laid. It's all fully built. And this is one of the arguments that I think is coming up in our thinking now, is where do we mark the completion of the temple? What's the way we visualize temple? And I'm sure most of us have done it this way. We've got a foundation and then we start building this house, and I'm one of the people that have led you into that imagery, and I'm saying I'm not convinced that that's the correct imagery. This is the platform, this is the temple. It's constructed, it's a body of truth, separate and distinct from us. And if that's the case, it's all ready, it's all finished. We're in 50, and all they're doing is just guarding those foundations. If anybody touches them, they get attacked, because they're going to defend this. They're not going to add bits to it. There's nothing to add to it. And even if we want to talk about the 1863 health vision, I would argue that health or the medical missionary work is the right hand of the gospel. It's not the gospel, it's just an adjunct therapy. Sister Tamina.
In the Middle East,
Sorry?
in the Middle East, their houses have flat roofs. So you have your house completed right then with the
Can you say
platform.
that again? Okay, I couldn't hear you.
In the Middle East, you have not roofs like this, but flat roofs. So the platform there is a flat roof. The house is completed.
Okay.
Brother Daniel?
By this quote here, because normally our mental imagery is you have a platform and then the pillars. But we just saw that first you have the pillars. They are the foundation. And then in the top of that you have the platform. So I think the model there about the 3 steps being the foundation, the pillars, they are the one that leads you to the platform, and that's the imagery we should have of the temple. And then
I just want to add that you might have seen imagery done this way, that there was a foundation and then that there were pillars, and this would be the 43 chart and this would be the 50 chart. You've seen picture work done like that, or at least if it wasn't drawn out like that, that's the imagery that we thought about. And I mentioned this in class a while ago. But if we see this here, first, second, third step, the first and second angel's messages is this history essentially. this is the foundations, but it's equally the pillars, which is the 50 chart. Once you combine the 50 chart and the 43 chart together, you are now got this body of truth, which I'm saying is the platform. Everything's complete and finished. By the time you get the two tables, this is 46, if we can use that concept, two tables, 46, the 10 Commandments. You don't start adding to the 10 Commandments, it's all done and dusted, it's all finished by that stage. Everything else is just additional information. Sister Bromley.
So how I recognize what you're saying is that if we take that model down there that you've been building, once the people are assembled on it, that's the living temple, the real living temple. It's not even a building, it's just those people standing there.
Yes.
Living stones. Living stones. I was going to say the same.
Oh, okay. Yes. So, I like the imagery here in this early writings passage. Just want to see if there's anything else. So it's in this passage that she talks about those who rejected the first angel could not be benefited by the second, neither were they benefited by the midnight cry, which was to prepare them to enter with Jesus by faith into the most holy place of the heavenly sanctuary. So it's that if you don't accept the first, you can't accept the second. All of that is in this chapter about the firm platform. It's an interesting passage. Coming back to our document, last paragraph. So let me summarize before we go to the last paragraph. We're in 207.3 and 208.1. The bearings, she understands all the bearings now. So we see that in the time period of the latter rain, we're required to understand the bearings, or our message in all of its bearings. Sorry?
Bearings.
Bearings. Sister Alyssa, what does bearings mean?
So the original conversation that we had about bearings was that it's a navigational term helping us to understand everything around us. Within this context, it's to focus on the entirety of a subject, so the entire message and its implications. And I'm probably missing a lot.
No, that's fine. That's really good. Brother Greg?
Where was the word bearings? Where were we reading from?
We're reading from 1SM 208.1. It's the second from the end paragraph. And it's also found in GC 343 paragraph 2, which is where we originally read it. It's the only word bearings in the Great Controversy.
So she's talking about she needs to present the light in all its bearings, so all the directions that it takes you to.
So all the directions that it takes you to, bearings is really a compass, north, east, south, west. That's what Sister Alyssa's saying. And often we say, well, we're interested in this direction, the northerly direction, but we need to understand it in all of its wholeness, which is not just one direction. You know, sometimes we do the four winds, which is really north, east, south, west, and that becomes a worldwide or an all-encompassing concept, the number 4. We say number 4 equals worldwide. So that's what the bearings are. Bearings are number 4, which means, I can't say worldwide, but it's in its completeness, or it's in its fullness. So she understands all the message in its fullness. We've seen that the pillars and the foundations are really synonymous terms. When someone attacks even a part of it, we're required to meet it and not shy away from this issue. And it says, upon this foundation we have been building for the past 50 years. I'm saying this building upon the foundations is not some expansion of the foundation. The foundations are a set dimension, they're a set size, they're a set body of truth. And this building is really like an establishment We've been establishing and verifying and proving the truthfulness of these foundational concepts or the platform since over the last 50 years. Nothing has changed. That's her point. She's saying we haven't changed directions. Everything was firmly fixed 50 years ago, and there's been no change, no taking away and no adding to this information. So that to me was a summary of what I've picked up from these 2 paragraphs. Brother Daniel.
I'm just amazed here with the quote we read about early writings, because this year we saw many testimonies of people saying that people that left the movement, they're coming back. We saw that in Brazil. I heard some people here in USA talking about that, and I think this quote is very powerful. We read this quote many times to talk about the 3-step in testing, but I never saw this. So it's just another argument.
Amen. I like that. Okay, last paragraph then. We are God's commandment-keeping people. For the past 50 years, every phase of heresy has been brought to bear upon us to becloud our minds regarding the teaching of the Word, especially concerning the ministration of Christ in the heavenly sanctuary and the message of heaven for these last days, as given by the angels of the 14th chapter of Revelation. Messages of every order and kind have been urged upon Seventh-day Adventists to take the place of the truth which point by point has been sought out by prayerful study and testified to by the miracle working power of the Lord. But the waymarks which have made us what we are to be preserved, and they will be preserved as God has signified through His Word and the testimony of His Spirit. He calls upon us to hold firmly with the grip of faith to the fundamental principles that are based upon unquestionable authority. So that was a nice conclusion to this article. Then if anybody's got any comments on this one.
I was wondering if it has a significance that for 50 years she's battling that. Is that something we can apply to us? I guess we can apply to it, but...
You can. I'm not sure what the application is or what we would do with that.
So we also have a 50 till Pentecost or Mount Sinai.
Yeah. I don't know, but then if anybody's got any thoughts. What I saw was that these attacks, these heresies, are based upon what doctrines, what primary doctrines?
Sanctuary.
So it's basically the sanctuary, it's Christ's ministration in the sanctuary, and then also she talks about the angels of Revelation 14. So if it's the angels of Revelation 14, what history is that? Millerite. She's taking us all the way back to Millerite. They're attacking the Millerite history, first and second angels, bringing you to the third angel, which is essentially the investigative judgment, leading them onto the executive judgment. So I found that point interesting, and they're the very attacks that we should expect to see in our history. And then she talks about they want us to turn away from the truths which point by point had been sought out by prayerful study and testified to by the miracle power of God. So that's the post-1844 history that we've been discussing. So she's including seamlessly from 1798 to 1844 to 1850. The waymarks which have made us what we are to be preserved. Those waymarks are what? 1798, 1840, you could probably argue 1833, I think that would have been in their horizon. For certain 1837, I,
7, what happened there?
sorry?
Why did they mark 1837? I don't understand. What happened in that year? Why do they associate that with the first angel's message?
Okay, so the 1837 is here on this chart, so you're familiar with
Yes.
that. Brother Daniel, what's 1837?
I heard once, but I'm not sure. That's the day when they put the prediction in the ships to send it across. But I don't know. I heard that from Sister Olivine, but I'm not sure.
What?
Is that correct?
I don't know. I'll check with her. Sister Alyssa?
When Joseph Wolf was brought before Congress to, I guess he basically gave a testimony about the message.
So we can mark Joseph Wolf standing in Congress giving this message to basically the government of the United States. So we marked that in 1837. I'm not sure about the loading of the message on boats.
Yeah, maybe.
I'm not saying that's wrong.
I don't know. Maybe I'm mixing a lot of things.
So these are basically Millerite dates. April 1844, July 1844. I'm not sure if the Millerites would recognise August in the way that we do. They certainly recognise July. July is the midnight cry for a Millerite. Something obviously wonderful happened in August. But even Ellen White talks about midway, it's July that's the focus. And for us, the focus has shifted from July and sort of turned over to August. But when the Millerites talk about the midnight cry message, their reference point is more often than not July. These waymarks have made us what we are, to be preserved, and they will be preserved as God signified through His Word and the testimony of His Holy Spirit. Okay, so we'll finish this document. We read this document. It was kind of, I kind of just said a respite from what we'd been studying before, and I meant that in a serious way. But I also wanted this to, in the last, few classes that we had, to just do an exercise to run through. This is only a small passage in a larger document, but it's pretty much self-contained. To see how we would read that and how much information you can draw out. And I think as you've gone through that, as we've gone through it together, I'd be surprised if you weren't amazed about how much information is on one side of this sheet of paper. I mean, we've spent hours and we still haven't exhausted this. Some things we've just sort of skimmed over the surface. There's a lot of information here. And, we spent a lot of time just in the first 2 sentences. So I want to do this to give us encouragement that if you just patiently work through passages, and you can do that in group settings so that we can come together, the Word of God can really open up to us. And even if we haven't learned anything particularly new, the fact that we can take a written passage and lay it on a line and develop a history, make an application, I wanted us to be encouraged that if we can do it on this one, and this really was just a random passage, we could have gone to another one, and we would have found similar truths, similar glories from God, just waiting, I'll say, to be discovered. I'm not saying no one else has ever discovered it, but it would be new for us. So I really enjoyed going through that, and hopefully we have learned at least a few things. Maybe some of our concepts were not quite correct. It's helped us on a number of. I've enjoyed this study on this one, so I found it a blessing. It wasn't directly connected to the reform line of the 144,000, as I said. I wanted to just do this as a standalone short study. Took longer than I thought, but hopefully you've been blessed. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for your goodness. We ask and pray for a blessing. As we've come to the end of this short document, we know it's part of a larger document, Father, but just in the blessings that we've received from this one passage, I personally want to give you praise and thanks for all the things that you've taught me. both in my approach to inspiration and just how you so graciously and so willingly unlock your word if we just come before you and persevere and come together as brothers and sisters. Lord, surely there's a real blessing to do that, and as each of us have been partakers of the blessing of coming together, and you've graciously opened your word to us. It's my hope and prayer that each of us walk away from just this short study with a blessing, knowing that we're your children and that you continue to answer the prayer of faith. We thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.